Good morning, everyone. This is from the Fringes, a program about alternative provocative views. My name is Jack. These are our own opinions. My guest stars today, Jack, myself, Steve Evans, Elaine McIntosh, Lou Hutchinson and Wendy. Okay, Google seeks to control news content. We're going to have to set up our own independent news networks in New Zealand, because I see sooner or later they will be coming against freedom of speech and trying to lock us out altogether. What do you think of that, Steve?
Well, I got knocked off Facebook last week, just when I was about to release a whole lot of press reports on the sacking of Grenier Moss.
Yeah, and Nathan King, an American radio broadcaster, has died at 87. He was making $3 million a week for his radio broadcast, and he was 87, so it gives me hope, being 66, so I've got a few years to go yet. Okay, at the Rates Association meeting, 2 regional councillor women spoke about bird sanctuary showdown, and Shaw hasn't sold the land to the Peacocks development people. There are historical power sites, has been tapu rahui put on, and Rikinui who is an ex-vet, represents sovereigns and the Maori government. He wants to sue the council here in the Maori Land Court. And there's also a Mount Messenger farmer who wants to protect the rata trees there over in New Plymouth. They also spoke about biodiversity and biosecurity, ecosystems, native and exotic pests and plants, and the Green Mask Agenda. Agenda 21, fraudulent project operating a shadow government controlling all land, water, minerals, plants, animals, construction, all human beings, transitioning us from representative government to unelected boards. There's also the Viola French Water Corporation privatising water, and this is quite a big issue here with the council. CEO Richard Briggs is being sued by Gallagher for corrupt practices. So the Rates Association stands for accountability, democracy, transparency, integrity. So this is wonderful to see that these freedom fighters, even with the Rates Associations, are starting to stand against the corruption that's going on in the council and holding them responsible for the huge debt.
Well, they sound like very similar people to us, Jack.
That's right. The fight for family justice goes on, Steve. Okay, Granny Moss, Tracy Martin refused to listen to families. Oranga Tamariki was not fit for purpose, uplifting children without notice, causing a lifetime of trauma. Okay, Steve, would you like to tell me, how do you feel about Granny Moss's resignation, and what are the implications of this?
Yay!
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's a lot of people around New Zealand, from Kaitaia to Invercargill.
We've got about 8 people here today. For Families for Justice.
There was a lot of people that had had enough, and I guess really it was a perfect storm. We were the snowflakes. We were followed on from many of the groups that had put in many years, and Jack, you've been at it longer than me. Yeah. They wanted to hold these people to account, and victims didn't have a voice, and we tried to help those people have a voice. Lou Hutchinson worked on it. When I first met Elaine, we were both really, really surprised at the lawlessness that was going on with the associates in the family court. I think that we've done a pretty amazing job, and it's not just Families for Justice, but it was a perfect storm. The real lady that cracked it was without a doubt Jean Tahuia and Melanie Reid, by filing in the Waitangi Tribunal about the uplifts in Section 78. And I've got to say that it must be very, very frightening to stand down the New Zealand police you know, the DHB and Oranga Tamariki, which is pretty much the all of government approach to the social engineering that has been going on for a very long time.
And it's been terrible, hasn't it? It's shut down a lot of families.
Oh, it's destroyed families.
Generational torture, and they've virtually done nothing about it.
Absolutely nothing about it. But the interesting thing is, you know, we can't take all of the credit, and we're not trying to. We also realise that, you know, with respect to Jacinda, she did get the Royal Commission of Sexual Abuse rolling, and that sort of disclosed the tip of the iceberg that 250,000 people were sexually or physically abused. In
I'd like you to clarify, what has Families for Justice done in the last year? Could you highlight that?
In the last year, we've worked with a group, United.
Yes.
We've brought together.
He's in hospital at the moment.
That's right. Yeah, we've brought together lots of little groups to try and give us all a voice.
Yeah.
SIFS fighters. You know, there was Pippa. There's been many people out there. There's been Graham Axford. Those kind of people that have been campaigning for a very long time.
Marius Ruckerus was brought last year.
Yeah, well, we brought him in.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, we've been reasonably successful with regards, first it was Tracy Martin, she wouldn't listen to us.
Oh,
so,
yeah. We shut down Winston Peters at a public trustee and told him he wasn't serving the people and he had to go.
Well, he wasn't.
Upset with that.
None of them were serving the people. They weren't listening to us.
Yeah.
And I think we've now made it very clear to the politicians, if you don't listen to the people, we're going to give you the arse.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be nice about it. We're over it. We've tried to write submissions. We have done a lot of work.
Now, these are our own opinions, I have to say that.
That's okay, yeah. There's a lot of us. You know.
Now, Peter Hughes, State Services Commission, head of MSD, appointed bureaucracy. What would you like to say about his violations or what he's done wrong, Peter Hughes?
I think it's just disgusting. I wonder if it's, you know, to me it verges on corruption. And the reason, I'll point it out. This man was originally the leader of MSD, which was Child, Youth and Family.
Yep.
Right? He was the man that got all the victims and people complaining about the abuse that they were suffering in the system. He got Thompson and Clark, the private investigators, onto it. And, you know, like, this man has probably controlled the abuse of children and families within the system for an enormously long time. And I need to go on here. This guy then appointed with Paula Benefit, who says there's no housing crisis, Grenier Moss to the role.
Yeah.
Then when the people had enough, and we've got to be very thankful for Māoridom, they were the people that really put the pressure on, you know, Whānau Ora and the likes. And then he gave her a plum job. Now, this is a woman that was running an organisation that I'm sure that when the Waitangi Tribunal comes out with its decision on the uplifts in Section 78, will say that the Crown has breached the Article 3 of the treaty. And if that's the case, I do not know in any private organisation in the world where as many complaints, I can think there's about 5 or 6 reports that have been made under her watch that gets another job. The rest of us, when we go through the abuse by OT, we lose our jobs, we lose our houses, and it takes us years to recover.
And someone said she had a long nose like a witch, and this is why she was attacking the family.
Well, I did see her broom, didn't you?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, we need to file in the UN, and you're talking about before about the judiciary needs to be changed, and judges are working for the state. And you're talking about the Waitangi Tribunal and how they represented families and looked at the breaches there. What can you tell us about how we're getting on with filing in the UN and setting a precedent with the way that judges are milking the system, as it were?
Okay, well, I want to put Waitangi Tribunal aside.
Yep.
I think that sadly, if we do have a treaty, and if we all acknowledge it's true, then I cannot understand why the Waitangi Tribunal doesn't have any power. All it can do is make recommendations, which seems which is a shocking deal. But that's just my view. So let's talk about mainstream judiciary. The reality is that the family court is the head of the horse.
Yep.
We had a very clear strategy. We needed to knock over, this was a big horse. You had to eat this elephant one leg at a time.
Yep.
Oranga Tamariki had to be taken down, and then we needed to move on to the people and who actually make those decisions.
I'm just going to do my gold digger impersonation.
Yeah.
Judge
Which is the judiciary.
Yep.
The judiciary is the most powerful organisation in New Zealand. How it's supposed to work is the judiciary is supposed to be independent of the state.
Yep.
But now you see the ombudsman come out in agreeing that the Section 78s were being abused by OT.
Yes.
You see the Child Commissioner doing it. Now, both of those guys were judges, right, in the family court or the youth court. And yet, the family court had been supporting the abuse of Oranga Tamariki. It's highlighted that the family court has lost its way. It is not operating as a impartial operation from the state. It's actually protecting the state. Now, the judiciary is supposed to be the interposer between the power of the state, which is overwhelming, and the individual rights of a person who is fragile. And when you have to take on the state, which is all its ministries, the New Zealand Police, which fabricate evidence, they pass it on to Oranga Tamariki, and then the Law Society, which is a self-governing organisation which is more interested in making money out of the business of law rather than getting justice, which most of us seem to mistakenly believe that they're going to try and help you get justice. It shows that the state, which was and the judiciary were complicit.
Yeah.
They were not operating independently. Long time ago, they should have said Section 78s were not. And I can confirm this. Judge Burns, in my case, said, I only listen to the professionals. I never listen to the parents.
I had a social worker last week who stood in front of me and brought in the police when I left Peter for a minute to go and get something across the road. And I got angry at the cop because the social worker was standing behind him. And I said, you are complicit in the abduction of what's going on. I don't want you anywhere near my child. So,
well, you should be. That's exactly what should be happening.
Yeah.
The New Zealand Police have to be lawful. Us as citizens have to be lawful. We don't have to follow stupid instructions that are not lawful.
Yeah. Now, Elaine, are you ready? We don't need Oranga Tamariki anymore. What did you mean by that? What have you got to, what's your solution? Talking to the mic.
Well, I just don't think we need this organisation. All it's done is destroy families.
Yep. And you're also talking about the need for housing, education.
Yes. Now the thing is that the Maori people have said
Talking to the mic.
that they will look after their own children. And that's what everybody should be free to do.
Yeah.
When you think of the amount of money that goes into Oranga Tamariki every year, you may as well be pouring it down a drain, because all that's happening is it's causing huge anxiety and distress on parents and children. We could spend that same amount of money, I'm being a bit idealistic here, but still. We could spend that same amount of money enabling people to look after their own children properly.
Because you mentioned something about violence too. You said Oranga Tamariki was violent. I mean,
Well, they are.
3% of the uplifts are justified because there is violence involved, there's meth involved, and they have to protect the children. But you're basically saying that Oranga Tamariki was producing the violence. Can you qualify that?
Well, if only 3% are justified, what a huge amount of money is being spent on the rest.
Right.
Most parents that I see that get involved in Oranga Tamariki need a helping hand up.
That's
Not
right.
another hammer on the head. Yes,
People need stable homes.
Totally.
They need jobs.
Now we were talking about setting up our own Hamilton Families for Justice Centre and setting it up as a Mums and Dads for Kids group, Hamilton Community Centre, dealing with baby time issues, parenting courses, mediation, shared care, surviving separation. teaching self-representation and setting up advocates, lay assistant, McKinsey, friends. We should have these groups, because you talked about leaders around the country, didn't you?
Well, that's one of the things we've done, is we've now started to set up leaders around the country. You know, I've been very amazed to meet these people over a long period of time. You know, most of us never even met each other 3 or 4 years ago. And we've only met because we're on the same path. We've just got to try and cooperate and work together.
Right. Okay, so today we're talking about how do we feel about Granny Moss resigning? What are the implications of that, and the fact that she was a witch and attacking families, the uplifts that have gone on. We've also been talking about Peter Hughes and the state services and how he felt about his behaviour. And Elaine was talking about Oranga Tamariki not being fit for purpose, and we need to have our own system of looking after parents and families. And I've been talking about setting up our own Families for Justice Centre, where we teach people how to self-litigate and how to represent themselves in court. Now I'd like to talk to Lou Hutchinson. That's your name, isn't it, Lou?
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, what can you tell me about Matthew Tautaki? Is that his?
Matthew Tukaki. So,
Yep.
Minister Davis has come out this morning and they've announced a new panel. And Matthew Tukaki has been appointed as the chair of an independent, they say it's an independent group. There's 4, Dame Nada Glavish, Sir Mark Solomon, and there's a social worker on it that I've actually never been aware of before. So they've come out and he's announced this to say that this is a new advisory for him, which, I mean, for me, it's like Matthew Tukaki is aligned with the Labour Party. So to me, this is just more shuffling of the chairs. I mean, yeah, it's great that Moss is gone, but we have to continue to keep our foot on the pedal, because this is just more shuffling of the chairs, and there is no transparency. Look, you appoint a man, Matthew Tukaki, who's lived in Australia for the last 2 decades, and there's people in this room and across the nation that have been working on this kaupapa for decades, and they're not even part of that advisory panel.
And it seems as though they're just shuffling the deck chairs around, and there's no major changes.
No.
They keep passing the buck. What about David Calvin Davis? He's also talking about, hasn't really done anything spectacular about Oranga Tamariki. How do you see this stuffing around, Steve? Or what should we be doing? What should
Calvin's running out of time.
Yeah.
I've met him on a number of occasions. I've tried to treat him fair and reasonable. But you know, he just won't answer. He's a perfect politician. But I tell you what, his people will turn on him, and he'll be out.
Well,
and listen, we were a little group of people, and we may have only been a speck, but we got rid of Tracy Martin, and New Zealand First suffered very badly. And I, Jacinda, wake up. We want action. It's not going to be very good if we don't see open and transparency. We're not all stupid. We can see you, you're the Labour Party shuffling the cards here and doing absolutely nothing. Well, we aren't prepared to stop.
Now, I remember when I stood in the elections for the Republican New Zealand Party, Wendy was there. Come over here, Wendy. And Wendy was holding a sign, and the Labour Party representative was there, and we were talking about families and so forth. We didn't have a good reception there, did we, Wendy?
No, we didn't. Like, who was that? Gurvashamashama? I call him. I don't pronounce it. He literally couldn't even continue his speech. He said that those signs were distracting to him. You know, as a politician, surely distractions.
Now, what I reckon is we need a patron of the trust. What politician or MP can we go to? I think the Maori Party, Rawati, over in Rotorua, he should be representing. Just stay there, Wendy. He should be. We need to get a politician to represent our cause. What are we doing about this, Steve?
We're not going to get a politician. Why would I get...
Are they all puppets? Are they all anti the family, the nuclear family? What's going on here?
Well, they've all got their own agenda, and it's all about staying in power. You know, the bottom line is we're targeting the bureaucracy because the bureaucracy runs this country.
Yeah.
The politicians don't. Welcome to Jacinda and
So
More.
you're saying the lawyers, MST, Oranga Tamariki, they're running the country and they're using the police as puppets. So the bureaucracies, what do you mean by that?
Well, the bureaucracy actually run the country.
They're
They
making the money,
have
they're milking it.
they have their own agendas. They, you know, like it seems to me quite clearly, and we saw it through the annex sites actually sort of pulled it out in the Waitangi Tribunal case, was the issues over the 700 million that was allocated. Now, someone in Cabinet has done a pretty good job about saying these are the milestones, da 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 da. Well, when he was questioned, what was the guy's name? The CEO that stepped down, the deputy CEO that stepped down. He couldn't answer one question. It was embarrassing. I actually left the court and actually went outside and watched it on TV. It was just so embarrassing.
Now, Lou, what do you see as solutions? You're talking about Matthew Tutaki, okay, being the new leader or the big-time CEO of Oranga Tamariki. But what are your solutions? What should we be doing? Because you're saying that they can't change, they rearrange the deck chairs on board the boat. What are we supposed to be doing, Lou?
Well, we need to
Talking to the mic.
We need to clean out that the middle management, the hierarchy that's been sitting in those bureaucratic posts for years down in Wellington, and obviously that's
Clean out the trough.
Yeah, it's going to take a while to do that. I mean, just with the appointment of Witta Gardner as the acting CE, it's like, I mean, Witta and Hekia, so his wife's Hekia Parata. So, I mean, they were appointed to do that review on the Waikato University about the racism. And you've got high-profile lecturers.
Well, Steve was just saying,
Linda Smith and
does the Treaty of Waitangi have clout if they're not paying any attention to the breaches and you've got these high-class lawyers at the top and they're milking it? Are they really there to serve the people in the Treaty of Waitangi?
No.
The breaches that are going on?
No, not at all. And that's why the fight that we do out on
Now, I'd like to
has
just
continue.
talk to Wendy about being an alienated parent. What is it like?
Well,
It's terrible, isn't it? When you're
It's-
alienated and the system doesn't represent you and
what it
talking
is,
to the mic.
Sorry. Well, for me personally, it's 5 years now. I know there is a lot of others out there that have maybe had longer or the similar time. You grieve for a child that's alive. You are fighting a government organisation that thinks you're just a little minion and who will run around and do everything they say. You know, they hold power and they know it. Here in Hamilton, my dealings with Oranga Tamariki have been just pure narcissistic Gestapo.
Yeah.
Basically.
Now, I mean, we see with McCarty, his case, that they've turned him against himself and he's basically taken out knives and so forth, and now they're ready to uplift the child from the mother.
Yeah.
I mean, where's the justice in that? Can't they reconcile mum and dad and represent the parents? They have rights to their own children.
Yeah, well, they absolutely can, and they can help the parents to get to safety. There's a lot they can do, but they just choose not to. Like I say, social workers that I've found here are just greedy, absolute greedy. Like I've tried for the past 2 years to get an appointment with Paul, what's her name? Sorry, Rochelle Bennett here, who's the boss of Oranga Tamariki here. 2 years, and it was only because I called her on private number.
Now, if we start off Families for Justice here, we want to train up common law practitioners. We want people to know that they can receive counselling and we can listen to their grief, their pain, their torment. And it's only as they put together an affidavit and work through their grief that they're able to legitimately stand up for themselves and come through the darkness to the light and overcome all the grief. This is what we need to be doing.
They need to help families more. Like they love to break you. Like it, you do get to the end of your rope and you do get pushed so far that you think, what the heck can you do? You know.
Now, Kids for Justice, Steve. What can you tell us what Fifi's doing down in the South Island?
Well, we run Kids for Justice NZ, and that is really a forum for children to have their say. And that's also about children that are alienated from their brothers and sisters because, you know, they're separated. I mean, the thing is that there's people out there that will be watching this, and there will be people that will understand how being alienated from your child is the most monstrous
trauma
Disgusting breach.
And how many are
Basic
committing
rights.
suicide? How many are committing suicide per year?
Well,
Judge Boshier said it was about 12. We know it's about 50 fathers.
Oh,
and
it's more
mothers.
than that, Jack. It's more than that, Jack.
So the grief goes on.
We
the torment
actually
goes
lose
on.
more people in New Zealand to suicide than car accidents.
Yes, Wendy.
Sorry, I just want to say one other thing, Jack. The worst thing too, when you've been alienated from your child, is reading reports that your child, which they claim is supposed to be kept in care and protection, what they state their rights are, you hear about sexual abuse, you hear about physical abuse, you hear about them declining in school. You know, you hear about it all, and yet, as a parent, that's exactly what you've been stereotyped as doing to your child.
Right, so we want to
Yeah.
train up leaders around the
Yeah.
country, don't we, Steve?
Yeah.
To help people to self-litigate,
Yeah.
to help people work through their trauma. So give us solutions. What are we going to do this year? What's our focus as Families for Justice?
Well, we're still growing our regional bases all around the country, from Kaitaia to Invercargill, and we're asking and we're finding more and more leaders standing up around the country to look after their own communities.
Yes.
We've got,
Is the protesting going to go on?
well, it has to, because the state still hasn't listened.
Right, and the family court changes. What changes do we need to see happen there?
Well, the family court law reform, which Andrew Little was involved in, was an absolute load of rubbish. Nothing happened.
Yeah. So Lou? What do we want to see happen?
I'd like to see Calvin actually address some of the issues about returning children that have been stolen.
Right.
Like, what has he done whilst he's been the minister? There's been, we're still hearing today of the, the devastation it's causing, but they're still doing it, and they're still not addressing returning children.
Okay, this is from the Fringes for another week. Families for Justice. We want to see real changes in the judiciary. We want to see mothers and fathers reparented. Okay, so bye-bye for another week.
Oh, I see that.
Woo!